arguing. I'd ask that everyone stay standing so we can have a moment of silence to commemorate the thousands of victims from 9/11, 2001. Thank you. You can be seated. Welcome to the Attleboro School Committee meeting of Monday, September 11th, 2023. This is your notice that this meeting is being electronically recorded. I start tonight with some introductions of new administrators here at the Attleboro Public Schools, and for that I'll turn it over to
we're doing, and especially for the opportunity to expand our school to middle school this year. It's pretty exciting. We had a very busy summer working to develop a model that is in the same vein as the high school model that's been successful, but that also caters to the very unique needs of the middle school student and development. So the first rule of business was to put together a staff that gets us and that understands the work we do and is on board with the way we do things. And I believe we've done just that, and it starts right here with this gentleman, Mr. Derek George. Derek comes to us most recently as an administrator from the Fall River school system. He has a background in social work and nonprofit work, has done some work with JRI, but most recently as an administrator, and has worked with students in the elementary, middle, and high school level, which just makes him an incredible fit for APS and certainly ACA. Presently, he lives in Taunton with his wife and 3 beautiful children, some of whom are in the room with us, and of course a dog. And he sits on the Taunton School Committee.
My condolences.
I'm sorry.
My condolences.
My condolences, he said. So I am proud to work with such a fine person. He has jumped right in.
Sawyer, Assistant Superintendent Lori Reagan, especially Mrs. Hickox. Through the interview process, I was lucky enough to meet Mrs. Hickox and get her energy. Anyone who knows her knows she really lives and breathes this work, and it was a breath of fresh air to see that when I met her. I read about the program, I met some of the kids, I met some of the staff, and it truly was a place I wanted to be. And, you know, you always get that honeymoon phase with a lot of places, right? But as I came in and got to meet the superintendent and the assistant superintendent and got to do the trainings, it was an amazing welcome. It was a warm welcome all the way around. Administration team was amazing, the teachers, the families, the students. So I really feel honored to be part of this community, and I look forward to hopefully making some positive changes and keeping up the amazing work that ACA has been doing for the high school, as well as expanding that to middle school as well. And I look forward to coming back with some positive experiences that the students have had at our school. Thank you.
Great. Thank you and welcome to Attleboro Public Schools. I think one of the things we pride ourselves on here in Attleboro is that we're not just a traditional K through 12 district. We're pre-K to 12 plus with the ACA and the programs that they provide as well. So it's an important part of what we do and who we are as a district. So welcome you here and look forward to working with you and looking forward to hearing all the great things you guys are doing over there.
Come visit anytime.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. DeBenci?
Yeah, sorry. Welcome. It was, not so fast, Gene. I was just curious. I just had a quick question. What's enrollment look like now in the ACA?
We are, as always at the high school, they come in, they go out each try, and right now we're in the 50s, high 50s. We like to go as high as 70. That's what we think works. And we started with 8 middle schoolers. Since the school year started, we are at 10. We're hoping to get to 30.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And at this time, I'd like to call up Mr. Kevin Atkinson, principal of Wamsutta Middle School.
Good evening. Thank you for having us tonight. So you already know this, but Dr. Paul Madden, who was one of our assistant principals at Wamsutta, became the principal of Hill Roberts in late June. So I think it speaks very highly of the Wamsutta community that so many people took such a great interest in finding our new assistant principal, Mr. Peter Belisle, right around the 4th of July. I was amazed how many people, as school was exiting, how many people came to me, I want to be on the committee, I want to be on the committee. And we started by talking about the qualities that would make a successful middle school principal. And following that, we scheduled the interview process for after the 4th. And again, we had representatives, teachers, parents that really impressed me by coming in for the interview process where we interviewed a number of very strong candidates. And Mr. Peter Belisle just came out on top. And it was impressive because following your interview, the people on the committee were just, I want to work with him. He really seems like he knows middle school. Not only did he have a strong sense of curriculum and working with teachers, but just really a strong sense of he gets what it's like to be working in a middle school. He gets, just in terms of how personal you were, your sense of humor, the fact that you didn't seem flustered by some of the scenarios we threw at you of what a typical middle school day can look like, unfortunately. And really, you impressed at the interview, and you've impressed since coming aboard. Since coming aboard, even in 3 short weeks, you've made a strong connection with the staff, definitely with the families and the kids. Already attended a PTO meeting, so I'll stop rambling on and introduce Mr. Peter Belisle.
So first of all, I want to thank all of you, and especially everyone along this table here, for putting their faith in me. It's been one of the most welcoming experiences that I've had, whether it was from the administrative professional development that we had prior to the lead up of school, where I was able to be introduced to basically the climate and the culture and the spirit of this district and the community, and it was really great to see. And everyone came up and made me feel immediately welcome. And then as the teachers came into the building, I got to experience that same thing. And it was a moment. I'm coming from Providence Public Schools, so a very different setting, and I would walk into school every day, and kids would just cruise on past. They wouldn't say a word. My very first day getting out of my car, I'm a few feet from the door, and this kid goes, "Hey, how you doing? You the new assistant principal?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And I got to talk to them, and it was great. So the kids have been just you can just tell, the climate and culture is just so, I want to say family, and that's what I'm really hoping to jump into, and it's definitely what I've experienced so far. So again, I want to say thank you for inviting me into this.
And I failed to mention that his resume was very impressive. Just years in the Providence Public Schools at Mount Pleasant High School, and all his references were just student-centered, works great with staff, just hire him.
Great, thank you, welcome, and congratulations on the new position. I look forward to working with you and the WAMSETA team. So congratulations. Anyone have any comments or questions for? And welcome. Glad to hear the first couple weeks are going well, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Congrats.
All right, next on our agenda tonight is open forum. If there are any members of the community that would like to come forward and address issues with the school committee, now is the time to do so. All members of the public will have a time limit of 3 minutes per speaker. If you'd like to come forward and address the committee, please do so. Okay, we'll go ahead and close open forum and move on to the superintendent's report. Mr. Sawyer?
Thank you, Chairman. At this time, I would like to invite up the members of my team for our full report on this year's opening of school. So I am here to report that we had a strong opening to the 2023-2024 school year. I would say that it was our best yet. We're very proud of all the progress we've made. I think we can all remember some of the openings we had many years ago, and we've come a long way in making sure that people have what they need and understand how things work, and help to create the stable kind of environment that makes for a strong opening. That does not mean that there isn't room for improvement and that we aren't without our issues, but I do think people need to understand that part of what we're dealing with is that ultimately education is a seasonal industry, right? Every year we shut down one season, go on hiatus, and then go from one day having nobody in the district to having 6,000 people here in another day. And I don't know anybody that could go from 0 to 6,000 in one day without having a few hiccups along the way. And so that's always going to be part of what we're grappling with as a district. But I think we've gotten much better at putting ourselves in the best possible position to make that work. I would also say that there are some factors that we don't control. We get late resignations, sometimes right before school starts, sometimes even after a day or two after school starts. So that leaves us scrambling. We have late registrations. We've often kidded about the people who see the buses rolling and say, oh, maybe I should register my child. So those kinds of situations certainly create some complications. And as a district, we try very hard to make sure to provide as many services as we can. Fee for service is certainly something that Mr. Furtado, I'm sure, will talk about as part of his update. But I know that our decision to try to be as accommodating to families and not let what's easiest for us to do, which would be to set an early deadline and refuse to budge on it. Our decision to try to be accommodating does result in our timelines being later than perhaps they could be, but that's the trade-off that we make as a community, and one that we support and continue to deliver on. Last week's heat certainly was a bit of a disruption to an otherwise strong start. I think it's important that we all acknowledge that safe environmental conditions are a precondition to learning. We put a lot of effort into making sure that our learning environments are safe and conducive to learning. But sometimes life gets in the way of that. And it comes in many forms, right? Snow days are a common one, but we've had episodes where we've lost power in a specific school or across the district. We can have a water main break. There are all kinds of things that can get in the way of our ability to operate our schools in the kind of environment that we want to. So heat is just one of those. We have, standards that we've set in the district that we pay very close attention to. We monitor temperatures, we monitor conditions, and when we feel like our ability to operate the school safely gets in the way, then we have to take action. On days in which we have schools planned, as we've talked about many times in many different ways, we're always going to try to keep that school open for that because we know that people are counting on us. So it's only when things are pretty significantly dire that we have to say, all right, something has to be done here. And last week at Willett, we felt like we were there. As we talked about on many occasions, Willett's has very, very limited air conditioning, has no large open spaces, and is fundamentally, due to its construction, a large brick oven. So, we found ourselves heating up at the building during the day and not getting enough of a reduction in heat over the night to be able to mitigate, what goes on during the day. So each successive day of high heat, we're starting at a higher temperature, which means we reach a higher temperature, which is why we ended up in the condition where we had to call those early releases. I know that that's an inconvenience to families, and we are sorry that we did that, but I think people in the Willett community do understand what we're operating with. And the good news here is that, we made air conditioning our schools district-wide a priority many, many years ago. We've been slowly working on it, and we really believe that we are nearing the finish line and hope to finally be there by this time next year. So we do have Willett that's our biggest issue with this, but Thatcher and Studley, the staffs there, need to be acknowledged that they had several rooms that were in high heat, certainly working under difficult conditions because those buildings do have large areas that are not air conditioned, but they do have a significant portion of their buildings that are air conditioned, and they also have large atrium spaces that gives them flexibility to give people in heated areas a chance to get cooling that Willett doesn't have, which is why Willett's our most restrictive school when it comes to dealing with heat and why we had to take the action that we did last week. Again, I'm really crossing my fingers that come this time next year, every classroom will be air conditioned, and this will be an issue that we no longer have to grapple with. I also wanted to update the community on our communication plan, which is centered on our use of the platform Aptigee. Aptigee, just to clarify terms, because I know there's a couple different terms that get thrown around depending on who you're talking to, and parents have expressed some confusion about what we mean by which terms we use. So just as a quick primer, Aptigee is the company that we buy the platform from, right? So everything is technically Aptigee. Aptigee hosts our website and hosts the services around our communication using that website. They also make our app, which is the APS app, which we've been asking families to download. And at this point, we think that we have pretty much full coverage on the app. Now, the users within the district who use the website to post things to the feed or use our ability to communicate directly to families using some of the tools within that program or through rooms, which we'll talk about in a second, all of those are used by us in a platform called ThrillShare. So some people have asked, what's ThrillShare? ThrillShare is what the users within the district are using to access the tools. So the app is where families would see these messages. The Aptigee is the company that puts this all together. ThrillShare is the app that the educators and administrators are using to access the tools. And then finally, Rooms, which is the thing that's the big promotion that we've been doing this year, is the communication tool between the district and families, specifically teachers and families is where we're trying to promote the communication, and that's a feature within the app. So Rooms is a feature within the app. If you have the app, you have Rooms, and those are sort of the key terms for how that all works. Through all this change, we certainly have had families reach out saying they're having problems making it all work. We've been working with families as they ask for help. We believe that everyone who's asking for help is getting help. And through that interaction with families, we've been getting really strong feedback about concerns people have, things that work for them, things that they think don't work the way they should. And we've been relaying that feedback back to the developers at Aptigee. And I just want to say that they've been very responsive to our feedback. Now, some things are the way that they've developed things and aren't going to change because it's a feature of how they think things should work. But some things really don't work the way that we believe they should and that parents are expressing, and they have been receptive to that feedback and are actually working on improvements. And we've seen lots of small things along the way, and we're hoping that they'll continue to make improvements that make us all happy with the experience that we're having. And then finally, I would just say that we used all of this the way it's all intended to for the first time when we had to call the early release at Willett. So we were using, we went into ThrillShare and were able to send an SMS message to families. So, parents received a text message on their phone like they would from another phone number. They received a robocall to their primary phone number, which if you have a house phone, is your house phone. If it's not, it's whatever cell phone you gave us. So you got the robocall with the voice message. I don't know what that sounded like, but I believe it's, AI speaking our words. And then we also put it in the live feed for the school. And we did that because we wanted to make sure that if a parent at Willett went into their app, they would see the message there as well, but that parents in other places wouldn't see it so that there wouldn't be confusion because it was only an early release at one school. If it were a district message like a snow day, everybody would see that. But these are all tools that we're using from this new platform, and we think that when we get good at all of this, it's going to be a much more effective way. And finally, to go back to rooms, we're very excited about rooms. Again, this is new for us as well. There's a real learning curve for everyone involved, teachers and parents alike. But to be quite honest about it, while there are some parents who like email and are conscientious about email and want to make sure that we're going to continue to use email, which will be the case, but a lot of our emails, we have good reason to believe, are being unread. And I think that for those of us who manage an inbox in 2023, it's pretty easy to understand why it's not hard to lose sight of emails and to have things get buried in the constant flow of that. And so we believe that the Rooms technology, that Rooms platform, with the direct communication between the teacher and families, will ensure that more of our information will be read and noticed and not get lost in people's inbox with a little badge that says 1,000 messages, right? So that's the thinking, and we do believe that in time we'll build capacity to make the most of that opportunity. To switch subjects, last May, I presented to you our plans for developing a new policy for student cell phone usage. As part of that plan, I discussed how in the fall we'd be eliciting feedback from stakeholders. So we are planning to do focus groups with staff and students within the district, and we're also planning a parental forum for the fall to invite parents from the entire district to come in and participate in a discussion about where we need to go as a district on our cell phone. So there'll be more details on exactly when that gets planned, but that will be something that we set soon for a time later this fall. And we'll keep the committee informed about our progress on that important endeavor. Okay, that's my update, and at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Regan for hers.
Thank you. So I'll start with the summer. So this past summer, we welcomed over 260 students to our summer programming in addition to the ESY program. So we had our Jumpstart program, which was incoming kindergartners. We had about 30 students attending that. Our Title I Reading and Writing Camp, which was students incoming grades 1 through 4. We had about 70 students. In our English Learner program, which was grades 1 through 11, we had about 80 students. Our middle school project-based learning program had about 30 students, and our credit recovery program through the high school had about 50 students. And so all in all, I felt like it was a positive experience for all those that attended. We had really nice small groups, so the students were able to get some of the really focused, targeted attention and learning experiences that we hoped that they would get through that programming. So. The district leadership team, as you heard both of our administrators speak about this evening, our entire district leadership team started on August 7th. They engaged in sessions specifically around our culture and belonging and our mission and vision as Mr. Belisle mentioned. We also had specific training on safety care, inclusive practices, and we also had a review of our new data dashboard called Link It, which will be rolling out to teachers in the beginning of October. On the 28th, we had all of our teachers attend actually over 50 professional development sessions. Some of the topics that they engaged in or participated in were CTE, curriculum and development, Open SciEd, math reasoning, integrated arts, safety care for our staff, enhancing teaching and learning with technology, and welcoming and supporting newcomer students. There were also several sessions for our special education staff too, very specifically designed for them and their specialties. Part 2 of that session will be on November 7th, and so we still have more to go for each of those sessions. In our schools, I got to visit my first school today, but it was great to see a lot of the students with their smiling faces. Everyone's really trying to get the routines and their processes in place, and we're transitioning to starting to do more targeted instruction in all of the content areas, so that was great to see. And then finally, starting in October, I mentioned that we'll be doing the Link It training, but we will also be rolling out our Portrait of a Graduate. I know we've been talking about this for quite some time. We learned a lot through the focus groups that we had with our community and students and families over the past couple of years. But once again, our overarching goal is so that all of our graduates will be self-directed lifelong learners who are engaged and responsible citizens. And in order to do that effectively, the 4 components that we are relying on to be able to meet that goal is so that everyone will be able to effectively communicate, collaborate, innovate, and be healthy and well-balanced. So more to come on that for everybody from across the district during their targeted professional development days, but just wanted to make sure you were aware that we were starting that process officially this year. So thank you. I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Medeiros.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good to see you. I'm going to start with extended school year. We serviced about 300 students with 95 staff. I want to thank the staff, the families, the students, our ESY coordinator, Teresa Silver, for plugging away through that. Our attendance was much better than years past. We still had some challenges, particularly with our inclusion students, but we think some of that was we decided to do a 4-week session. We've tried 5 weeks, we've tried 6 weeks, but we expanded the hours in the day, so we did 4 weeks, 4 hours a day. We had kids the majority of our students come 4 days, but some students come 2 days, some students come 1 day, and that seemed to, staff feedback was very positive on that, and attendance was better, so we're going to look at student data, but we think that the 4 weeks really worked for us, and we would probably continue with that with the 4 hours for next year. As far as programming for this year, back in April, due to the increasing numbers with preschool students coming in, our youngest students, lots of referrals through early intervention, we added an additional classroom back in April at the ELC. At the end of June, we realized we still needed that classroom for this year, so we've expanded 1 classroom at the ELC for integrated classrooms, 2 sessions, a morning and an afternoon. With the increasing number of students in Insights for K-4, we've been adding the last few years a classroom at Thatcher every year. This year, those students are starting to move up to Brennan. We opened up a 2nd Insights at Brennan for the needs for that. And then at the high school, prior to COVID, we'd been working slowly and expanding that continuum of services at the high school. And thanks to Kate and her team, and the special ed staff and the staff at the high school, we've expanded our co-teaching offerings for students, as well as academic support classes for students. So really expanding that continuum of services, and I really want to thank Kate and her team for working and plugging away through that. It's certainly a challenge at the high school to provide special ed services. Oftentimes the students don't want to be pulled out of class, they don't want to be singled out, and as well as they have credit requirements for graduation, so a little bit different than elementary and middle school. So there's always a challenge there, so we've been plugging away through that. As far as new registrations for students with IEPs, we're about the same number as we were at this time last year. We are seeing an increase at the preschool. The high school's got a slight increase. However, the middle school last year had a significant number of students with IEPs who were registering here in Attleboro. That's down this year, as well as at the elementary level. And then the kids that are coming in, we continue to see students with intensive autism needs, particularly at the preschool level, and then as well as social, emotional, behavioral needs across the board, attention, executive functioning needs. Those are kind of the needs, pretty consistent across IEPs that we're seeing coming through. And then for staffing, we had a couple of last-minute resignations, as well as some unaccounted last-minute staff on leaves. We've been covering those positions, but we do have a BCBA open at the middle school level, as well as a therapeutic classroom at Coelho. And then at the ACA, we expanded or added on and created a full-time school adjustment counselor, and that position is still open. We continue to use, as we have been for the last year and a half, particularly in paraprofessionals. We continue to have those challenges, particularly in our intensive autism programming and staffing those with paraprofessionals. So we continue to use contracted vendors as we have in the past. I will say that our school administrators have worked really diligently to staff. Unfortunately, we don't have applicants for many of those positions, so that's certainly been our challenge and continues to be our challenge. And then prior to COVID, the Department of Ed was working through the IEP format and documents. They hadn't changed it in about 20 years. On this past April, they finalized it. They're rolling it out. Most districts, including Attleboro, will be rolling it out and implementing it in next school year. However, in preparation for that, we've introduced it to all our special ed teachers, our support staff back in the spring. We introduced it to our administrators at the Leadership Institute in the summer. We're continuing that into the fall. We'll do a little reintroduction with staff. We're doing a train the trainer. The department is offering a training on October 17th. Myself, Stephanie, and Allison will be attending that. We then will come back and train our team facilitators, who then will train our staff in our buildings with the rollout and the plan for that new IEP. We'll also be doing an informational virtual overview for families more in the spring to introduce them to that as well. I'll turn it over unless you have questions for me at this time. I'll turn it over to Joanne.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joanne DePalma, I'm Director of Family Engagement. I want to start off with an enrollment update. I know there's been a lot of conversation around enrollment. Right now, we're just starting to balance off, which is a delight for our end. Enrollment started for this year. Actually, the first enrollment for this year was on March 2nd of last year. So up to this day, we're still receiving 3 to 5 new enrollments per day, but it has tapered off quite a bit since we've opened. We do have some last minute folk coming in and realizing, as Mr. Sawyer stated, that school is here. So we are helping them come aboard. We've seen actually last year we had a pretty significant increase in enrollment, and this year we still are running high, but it's not quite what we had last year. But between the two together, it's caused an impact on the high school, with 8th graders at a higher rate coming up to the 9th grade, and then the additional 100 that we received this year is pulling that number up higher, which has now put us at a higher number than we've been at some time. So combined with all of it together, we see the difference at the high school. I'm sure the high school feels, and I know their team is working really hard at supporting all the students and getting everything in place. That being said, we're still getting new enrollments in every day. We had a total of 677 submissions for enrollment for this year. Of that, we've accepted 629 of them so far. We're still working through the last batch. That, all those families have been informed of where they stand, what they still need. Typically, it's missing documents that we're still kind of collecting and making sure everything's taken care of, especially with the health documents and the residency pieces. From there, we actually, to Yvonne's point, we did see an increase in ELC too, which it was noticeable this year. So we'll keep an eye on that. Overall, we do see people wanting to come to Attleboro. We have a lot of new faces coming into the district. We had a significant also number of people doing a late enrollment, so late August, more so than we've seen in the past, in the last 2 years that I've been there to witness it. It was a pretty significant jump in just the last few weeks, where all of a sudden we had a number, several people coming in daily. We could average about 10 per day for a while there, including the weekends, which we do our best to manage through all of them, or get through all of them. Right now, we have about 36 left in the queue, and that doesn't mean that it won't change by tomorrow, but we'll see. One of the things we did learn is that part of the online process challenge was that even though we had 677 in registrations submitted, we actually had 831 created. We're seeing doubles, so we know we have a communication piece, we have a direction piece that we need to clarify and clean up out there, and we'll work on that for next year. A lot of internal communication has increased significantly, so schools are getting, in the moment, like, this is coming to you, here's the student, this is what the student requires. We've done our best to really, really clean up a lot of that end of our internal communications. Right now, the other piece would be just continuing to streamline the process as best we can, period. The online system is working really well. I know that initiated during COVID, so it's grown quite a bit, it's changed quite a bit, it's adapted quite a bit, and so have we. So we'll continue doing that work as we move forward. We try really hard to keep everything as efficient, but also as easy as we can make it for families. We have many families that schedule to come in to have an appointment with us at the Welcome Center. They'll come in, they sit at one of our kiosks, and we help them walk through the process. And that's been very helpful. The other thing that we're working with that is just making sure that we have everything accessible to all of our families, because we have a wide range of families coming in, and trying to be ready for whomever comes through the door and make everyone feel welcomed. Enrollment-wise, that kind of sums up where we are right now, and we'll keep moving forward and keep, like I said, working on those processes. The other thing that my team and my group has been working on is our behavior intervention and support team that rolled out this year for middle school and elementary. That is a behavior specialist on elementary with 2 paras to work with behavior specialist in order to support all 5 elementary schools. And then on the middle school, we have a behavior specialist with a para as well. Both of those teams are in full operation already, working out there and being available to all of our schools and needed already to be able to jump in and start doing some extra, providing extra support and managing the transition from summer back into school, which can sometimes be a challenge for some of our kiddos. They are really, the paras have been very helpful in that case, because they're allowing, the para will stay, work with the behavior plan, make sure that there's consistent data being kept, while the behavior specialist is able to then move on to perhaps another site to be able to observe a student and then come back. So that's a huge change in what the practice that we've done in the past, and it's been very helpful. The last thing that we've been focusing on significantly right now is the safety plans and procedures for the high school. Synergy is coming in this week on Thursday. Synergy 911 works with the Attleboro Police Department. They'll be coming in to work on the impact plan, which is incident management protocols and critical tasks, in order to put together processes and plans that we don't have, and to provide us guidance and support, including supporting us to, determine rally zones and the like. So it'll be very helpful once we finish that process and are able to put everything together and move forward with being able to communicate to staff. Questions?
Yeah, of the 629 new registrations, that includes kindergarten, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
kindergarten this year is 272.
Kindergarten's only 272, okay.
Last year was 309. But this is also kindergarten season, so we're going to get an influx for over the next
Okay.
month.
All right, thanks. Any other questions? Mr.
Well,
Demancia?
I was just curious, because we talked about enrollments, and we all heard that there's, the high school's had a bit of a
It
bump
has,
this year.
yep.
What is our total district enrollment, estimate? If you don't have the exact number, that's fine, but
6,067.
1,067.
That's including ACA and AVA.
Right.
And then we have additional, if you do the enrollment tally as a whole, that would include like homeschool and all the rest as well. But actually in our system itself, being taught by our teachers is 6,067.
Thank you.
Such a good.
Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Palmer, you had spoken earlier about the Synergy 911, and I was wondering how that might be different from previous safety training we've had.
Synergy 911 is safety training. It's a company that comes in to assist us with our procedures, like how to do or complete lockdowns,
Okay.
where to go, how that should look, how that should be managed, where we should rally, and making sure that all of our documentation is up to date and clean and really is descriptive. The high school being new, it's and so large, it's been very helpful to have another organization, and I know we've had people here who've worked with them before and speak very highly of them, so we're excited to have them in to give us a hand.
Excellent. So would you say it's working in conjunction with the plan?
We remain with Alice as our the instruction piece for how we deal with potential threats.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Mr. Domenici?
Sorry, just because Ms. Johnson brought it up, does this Synergy 911, do they, I'm making an assumption here, do they do like a full risk assessment of the high school?
They came in, their first round, when they came to visit us, they sat with us, went over the school itself, and they were quite amazed by it. They really didn't, they were like, we don't really have anything to say that you need to upgrade, which was nice to hear. But, so they moved forward right into creating the actual action plans for the school. So they do look at everything.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope we wouldn't have need for replacement in a year-old high
So
school.
would
I
I,
just,
but it
I
was
was
nice
just
to hear.
thinking, from like an overall risk assessment, because then part two would be, would this be a group we would consider to use for all 8 other buildings?
I think right now, we want to see what they produce for this round, and then make a determination from there. Especially being such a brand-new building, they're starting from scratch up. It'll be really nice to see what they can produce, and then what we can take even from that in order to move into our other buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. So it has, as typical, been an extremely busy hiring summer for HR. While the numbers of resignations and retirements is still more than pre-COVID, it's moving back down to our pre-COVID numbers. So we had 17 retirements this year and 32 resignations. We're in our average pre-COVID was about 12 retirements and 20 resignations. So still more than we're used to, but heading back into the direction from the numbers pre-COVID. This year was the lowest year for a teacher vacancy at the beginning of the school year since I've been here, since 2016. And again, I'll attribute that to the improvement of our hiring practices and processes. Administrators becoming very comfortable with those processes and improvements, as well as, again, this is the second year that we had our teacher transfer requests moved to March. We had changed that date in the contract a year ago. That 1 month is extremely beneficial to have those transfer requests come in by mid-March, so that we can then do our shuffle with our positions to then be able to post our true vacancies mid-April to really get good, quality, strong pool of candidates for administrators to then hire. So we had a large number of our staff vacancies filled by midsummer. I'll get into some more specific numbers in a minute, but our current staffing numbers are 870. That doesn't include coaches or substitutes, but our full-time permanent staff, 870. We have 55 active subs. We continue to go through our sub pool. In our system, there are 150 subs. Some of them haven't been here in years, and so we're going to try to clean that up. And right now, there are 55 active subs in the system. To date, we have hired 78 staff for this school year. That is we hired 80 last year, so similar to last year in terms of numbers. 49 of that was AEA members, 4 administrators, 3 clerks, executive assistants, 20 paraprofessionals, and some lunch monitors. There are still 9 positions that people have been moved forward, but they're still in the queue, so have yet to officially start, but 9 in process. And then we still have 9 vacant positions in the district. Again, as I said, the lowest teacher vacancy. We actually, a week before the staff returned, only had 1 teacher vacancy, and we received 2 last-minute resignations so ended up with 3 teacher vacancies right at the beginning of the school year. They all have long-term certified teachers right now in the position subbing for those. Of the 3, again, 2 of them are last minute. The other one was a CTE, our computer systems and network teaching position. That's just a specialty and is extremely challenging to fill. So we are still looking for that, someone for that position. We still have 5 para vacancies. That's on top of or in addition to a significant number of para vacancies that are filled as Ms. Madero spoke to with contracted vendors. It's not that the positions haven't been out there. It's not that our administrators aren't doing a phenomenal job at interviewing the candidates that do apply. Their applicants are just not out there for these positions. So we are still utilizing contracted vendors as we did last year. This past school year, the HR Council worked on developing a district-wide retention plan. There are 5 components of a retention plan. We worked on 3 of them as things that we felt we already were doing fairly well. We just needed to tighten up on. And so the 3 components that we worked on this past year were asking employees for insight. The best practices around that are exit interviews, surveys, staff check-ins, and stay interviews. Again, getting as much insight from staff as to what we do well, what we could improve upon, and we do those things. I try my best to conduct exit interviews on staff to see if there are trends in what we could be doing to retain staff instead of having staff leave. Staff check-ins, up until 2 years ago, I did check-ins with new staff 90 days after they started. As the numbers from last year and this year, almost 80 people, that's a daunting task for one individual to do every year. And so the HR Council developed the process of check-ins being driven by the building principals now, which helps to facilitate further relationship building between them and their new staff. And so we developed a process for that, the time frames during the school year that they do random check-ins, what the components of those check-ins should be, and that it's much more of a informal, just that check-in. How are things going? Do you have the resources you need? Do you getting the support you need? And one of the things that we felt was really important in that was that the person doing those check-ins was not their evaluator. And so, because it's a different relationship, right? When your evaluator comes and tries to check in. So that was one piece that we fine-tuned this year, put in place for this coming school year. And then I will begin to conduct stay interviews, which is much more 3 to 4 year employees. Why are you staying here? What do we do that you love so much that you come back every day and want to be here? And so we really tightened up that bucket, that component of the retention plan. The second one was a more clear onboarding process. And we did that in a few different ways. We already have a mentorship program which supports the development of new teachers. But one of the biggest thing that we did in terms of that component of the retention plan is we overhauled our HR webpage on our website. So I can show that to you tonight, but it is up there, so please, I encourage anybody, even out there watching, to take a look at the HR webpage. Much more detailed into what to expect in the hiring process or the application process, the timelines for how long things take, background checks that have to be done. The information is all there about how to do that, where to go, what that entails. We have pages for substitutes, much more clear expectation of their pay rate and how the substitute process works. Really detailed page for paraprofessionals, or if you want to be a paraprofessional, they have to be highly qualified to work. A lot of people don't recognize that or know that, and so they either have to have taken a parapro test or have 48 college credits. And so how to do that, where can I go, links to support for that. We added job descriptions. Those were not posted on our website. And so we now have a whole section for job descriptions, which the Policy Personnel Committee over the last several years has really tightened up on our policies and gotten those up to date. And so now the focus shifts to job descriptions. We really need to start updating those. And as they're updated, they're put on the website for people to access. So I encourage, again, everyone to take a look at the webpage. And then the other part at the bottom is more resources. And so there are tabs there that don't have anything in them yet, but things more geared toward employees to go to for course reimbursement, EAP, the collective bargaining agreements are there. There's other things that we're going to add to this year, but we felt that was really one of the biggest things that's when people come to look at, do I want to work here? What do they see? And so we updated that over this past year as well. And part of that was also, Ms. Regan mentioned our portrait of a graduate. If you can all remember, we did do focus groups, the HR Council in years past, about what is an optimal employee. And we decided to rebrand that and call it a portrait of an employee. And that the goal is to find people that are self-directed professionals that impact our community in a positive way, and increase the effectiveness of our organization as a whole. And so trying to really tie things together and make that very clear to potential candidates what we're looking for here. Professionalism, knowledgeable, innovative, soft skills. So the third bucket that we worked on was a competitive employee compensation. We are fairly competitive here with our salaries, and this being a negotiation year, we certainly had the opportunity to make sure that was what it was, and it is. And one of the things from a retention perspective that we really focused on in negotiations with all of our unions was longevity, right? How do we get people to stay, and how do we reward them for staying here? And so we did do work with overhauling our longevity structure in negotiations. And then the lab will be reviewing stipends for what do people get when they're doing extra work here. So those were the three buckets that we really focused on this past year, and the plans made and put in place moving forward. This year, the support employee health and well-being component of a retention plan is the focus of the HR Council. And so they'll be looking at what does that look like for an organization. As we all know, it is imperative that our employees come to work in the best physical, mental, and emotional state that they can. And so what are we doing to support them, and what things can we do and put in place for them? So that will be the focus of the council this year. That's all I have. Excited to move forward and to do some more things this year with the council. Yeah.
Mr. Geddes?
Thank you. If you can, because I know that personnel matters can be confidential, but generally speaking, without whatever hard details you can provide, what would you say is some of the feedback that you've gotten from current and former employees about what we do well and where we need to improve?
I think one of the biggest things that people say about why they are here, why they love it here, is the community. The community feel, both from the actual community itself, but then the school community, their peers, their administrators, the support they get here is unlike any place they've been before. I hear that often. And so I think that that's a really great thing, right? That's hard to that's not just, oh, you pay well, right? Like, a lot of people can try to work towards that, but that sense of belonging and community that they feel here is hard to replicate in every workplace, so that's good. Some of the things to improve on, I think, more communication, better communication. I think we all work to, to strive to how do you get the message from here all the way trickle down to the same as what it, was meant to be conveyed as. And so more clear communication on certain levels is one of the things we can work on all the time.
And just as a quick follow-up, do the exit interviews happen just with staff that have resigned, or does that include retirees as well?
Because of the numbers, it's focused more on people who voluntarily leave, or, resign to go to work someplace else, not people who are saying, hey, I don't want to work anymore, and I'm going to retire. So they have been historically focused on the resignations, not the
For the sake of comparing, like, what are you expecting from your next employer?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Why did you leave here? What attracted you to where you're going?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
That leaves one. Good to see you. As the superintendent pointed out, it's been a relatively smooth opening, especially in some areas that in the recent past have given us some issues. I wanted to make note that we have a much smoother food service operation at the start of this year compared to what we ran into last year. Fee-for-service registrations have gone smoothly. However, with the increase in enrollment, we've got some issues. We've got a total number of applications at this point north of 1,850. That number is typically between 1,400 and 1,600 at the end. So we're substantially above that. It is leading to some issues on buses. Now, again, fee-for-service is providing the community with an opportunity to grab an open seat on a bus. Obviously, if there are not open seats, we cannot provide the opportunity, and we're going to be running into that situation shortly. So I'm not sure how that's going to play. We're still receiving, we've received about 350 applications since the deadline passed, and grabbing about 10 to 15 a week still now. It's been pretty intense. Hats off to the transportation office and to Bloom for accommodating the requests. We have about 40 applications currently that haven't been assigned a bus yet. But everybody else has. So I think as a district and as a school committee, you may be getting some turbulence in the near future about not having the opportunity available because the bus literally is full and there's not, we can't create more. Our technology group did an exceptional job, and I believe the superintendent referred to this in an earlier meeting, getting our Chromebooks out to students and to teachers. Sometimes we forget teachers are involved here too. Over 1,000 Chromebooks to students, over 150 Chromebooks to teachers. The schools themselves are in the best shape they've been in terms of spares and being able to accommodate, someone walking in the door today. So really, hats off to them. They did a tremendous job being ready prior to the start of school, and that was pretty impressive. Facilities-wise, lots of challenges, and it's happening every single day. Today's weather resulted in a couple of leaky buildings that we're chasing down. We had a mad dash to the start of school at Wamsutta for air conditioning, and fortunately, we met that challenge. At Studley, we did not. So we had a couple of critical components at Studley that aren't available at the moment, and that prevented the new system from getting fully engaged. They've tried some some exotic electrical engineering workarounds, and that didn't work as well. So we're weeks away, though. We're not months away. We're not years away. We're weeks away. But that was a pretty big disappointment. And in regard to Willett, we've got formal proposals on the table to do that work. Interestingly, both the approach to be taken is pretty disruptive on the interior of the building, so it's unlikely we're going to be able to do that this school year, but would be in a position to jump right on it in June and have it done prior to the start of the next school year. The roof at Willett had some bumps along the way, and we're still doing some work. Much like what happened at Brunel Wamsutta, as they started to get into the work, they found some things that nobody anticipated, nobody knew, and quite disturbing, and glad they found it. So that work will continue probably through the end of the month, where it was supposed to stop at the end of August.
What is the work they're still doing on the roof at Willett?
So there are large structures that are actually vents. The roof does not have ridge vents in many areas, which is kind of explains the pizza oven reference from the superintendent a little while ago. But these large structures, metal structures that have vents on the top, in looking at them, you would not look and say, oh boy, those things are in trouble. Getting really close to them and opening them up, you say, boy, those things are in trouble. So we're reconstructing those, rehabbing those entirely. And the other piece that was a bit of a challenge was the copper gutter work that was done on the building.
So that's being done now. Is that disruptive to the school day at all, or is it?
No, we had an extensive conversation on that, along with Jeff, the principal of the building, to determine how they wanted to address this, and really everyone's hope was to get the thing done as quickly as possible. So we did work a few of the school days at the beginning of the year, contrary to what we intended to do. But that got the kind of roofing piece completely off the books, and so we're left with these vent structures that.
Johnson?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Mr. Tyler, thank you so much for giving us the information regarding the buses. I might be jumping into this question a little too soon. But it's and I understand this is a lot of work, and why we encourage folks to sign up as soon as possible, because a change here can have a domino effect, and it's going to change something over here. But removing barriers to education is important, and it sounds like this could be a really big concern coming up shortly. Can you discuss in a little more detail what some of the efforts are being put forth to minimize the effect of students not being able? It sounds like with the full buses, what we can do to.
Sure. When we run into this circumstance, and this isn't the first time,
Right.
it's the first time in a very long while in terms of fee-for-service, though. Students are not distributed evenly throughout a given school district. Studley's 5 or 6 buses, the high school's 25 buses. Those are not all equally subscribed to. So at some point, we can start talking about roads, neighborhoods that are proximate to 2 different bus routes, and reassign those areas to the bus that's less subscribed, and relieve some stuff on the bus that is subscribed. But as you start pushing and pulling in that manner, you kind of soak up your capacity pretty quickly, and that then kind of expands the problem, because you had 1 bus that was a problem, now you're going to have 2 in short order. It does provide relief, but then, the next student that signs up triggers another problem. And So there's only so much of that you can do. We have been doing some of that already. We will continue to do that until, we've gotten to the point where our hands are tied.
I appreciate that. I know the transportation department and Bloom, they can move mountains, and so we definitely appreciate their efforts, and thank you for I just want to make sure the public's aware of the continued efforts being made to try to accommodate us.
Yeah, this is a, kind of a moving target, and it won't settle out entirely until first week in October, second week in October.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Geddes?
Thank you. So congratulations to all of you on a successful opening, and thank you for all of your efforts and the efforts of both your teams, each building, and really the families for making this as smooth as possible. It's always exciting to hear this, and this is better than last year. So we appreciate that continued improvement. One follow-up question related to the app. Mr. Sawyer, you had mentioned, so some of the, as you were discussing the app and some of the changes, some of the feedback that you've gotten, some of the feedback I had heard was that the app would suddenly be stopping or would not fully load. A lot of the other stuff, I think, kind of fell into the logistical programming that you had mentioned. You're providing that feedback to Aptigee. But as far as like stopping, not loading, is that something on Aptigee's end, or is that something that you all have noticed is more related to service providers or?
Yeah, so that's a tough one to answer, because as consumers in 2023, anytime you're having a problem, right, whoever you're talking to blames the other party that's involved, right? Like, is it the app? Is it the phone? Is it the connection? There are a lot of different moving parts in these things, and so sometimes it's hard to figure out what the problem is. In all cases, what we recommend, if the app is being, we'll say, glitchy in any way, our recommendation is to uninstall it, reinstall it, and that most of the time resolves whatever issue is happening. So I'm not quite sure whose fault that is, but that seems to work in most cases.
Excellent. And then something Mr. Furtado just mentioned brought up some of the kind of long-term back burner items that have obviously got put off at the start of COVID and have kind of been consistently on the horizon down the road. But we know that that how the city was divided 30 years ago for districting no longer works. We know that some of our breakdown of grades isn't ideal, and our schedule isn't ideal for optimal learning for students. So I know those are things that were being discussed and considered at different times over the last couple of years. So I don't know if you might have an update as to where those discussions stand, or those things that are going to continue to be on the horizon, or?
Yeah, so in terms of how we district our schools, it is our intention to return to that conversation. I think our capacity to do that was pretty limited last year by this construction project. And quite frankly, in this moment, this is still an ongoing project. So we're not quite over that hump, although we're getting closer to the finish line. But yeah, that is on higher up on the list of things that we are hoping to get to soon, because as Mr. Furtado's already talked about this evening, it would help with some of the problems that we're having if we looked at where we've drawn some of the lines. We know that that's a thing. I don't think it's going to be a huge impact for most people, but there are a couple neighborhoods that I think if we took a look at, perhaps there would be benefit on a district level for how we handle some of these things. So it is our intention to get to that one sooner than later. As far as how we organize the district, structure it in terms of the levels, we're where we've always been, which is that we really think we should take a strong look at certainly moving grade 5 back to elementary school. I think educationally there's a strong case to be had there. And we certainly have floated the idea and still are interested in having conversations about splitting elementary into an upper and an early. The problem with all of those discussions, the fifth grade piece and splitting elementary, is that the buildings as we currently have them don't support that. And that's pretty clear that in this moment, like, it's a non-starter based with the facilities we have. At some point in the future, and this is a little bit more in the medium range, we're going to have conversations with the city about plans for what are now our oldest buildings, which are Hyman Fine and Hill Roberts. And when we get serious about that, because, unlike the high school, which, B building was built roughly in the same period, Hyman Fine and Hill Roberts have served us extremely well. Those buildings, for all their design flaws from an educational perspective, I think we all bemoan the decision to do open classrooms. The buildings themselves have held up particularly well. So that's why they've done so well. But at some point, we have to talk about renovating them. They're not going to last forever. We have to get serious with the city to get ahead on the planning on that and not find ourselves where we did with Attleboro High School, which is that, we were white knuckling the last few years as to whether or not we were going to be able to hold that building together. We want to get ahead of it with these. So when we get to that place in the city's planning and its ability to take on a project of that magnitude, because they'll both need to be done roughly at the same time, I think there's a real opportunity to revisit the structuring of the district by level, because those renovation projects could be conceived of differently and an opportunity to reconfigure in a way that we can't now based on the facilities that we have.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Larson?
I look forward to this presentation every day. I think the team that we have running the district is amazing. I don't think the community fully appreciates all the different programs from pre-K to, 12 plus that we do, that you do. I shouldn't say we, I don't do any of it. On a daily basis, going back to your point, you and I have had this conversation a number of times. From an organization point of view, I always find it to have 800 people servicing 600 students in 10 or 11 different places, and then we stop. We take a couple months off, and then we start it all back up again. It's one of the most, from an organization point of view, in my world, it'd be the most inefficient thing to do in the world.
Yeah.
But it's
It's a
what we
terrible
do.
idea. And by the way, we move everyone around.
And you move everybody around, and you shift people in, you shift people out, you have new programs, you have a new way of doing everything, and usually you have about 2 weeks to get it done. And so I think it's amazing. I hope the community really appreciates all the hard work that you and everybody behind you and everybody at all the buildings really do to pull off school. Because I wonder sometimes if they really know all the different things that happen and have an appreciation for all the different things that people do for the 6,000 kids that we're here to take care of. And my hat's really off to everybody, and because I think you guys do an amazing job, and I'm not sure people really appreciate it. So I want you to know I do.
Well, we appreciate that. And, perhaps we didn't do a good enough job of making it clear that, in the end, the opening is successful because of the staff in the building doing their jobs. And really what our job is to put them in the best possible position so that when we open the doors and the kids come in, that they can do what they're good at. And we've gotten much better at putting them in that best possible place. And they're really the ones who deserve the credit for how well things have gone.
Doesn't happen in a vacuum, though.
Nope.
Every year around this time, we usually get inundated with some, constituents reaching out to us and saying, I'm having problems with this, I'm having problems with it. This year, I think I saw two. It was about communications, which you've already addressed, and it sounds like we're working that out. But to me, I noticed a remarkable reduction in the amount of negative feedback that we were receiving, or concerns, issues that we were receiving. So I just want to, again, commend the staff and you guys on everything that you're doing, because something's working. So that's great.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That concludes my report.
All right, thank you all. Great job. Job well done, thank you. Next on our agenda tonight, we have minutes from our August 14th, 2023 meeting.
Motion to
Minutes
accept.
was-
So moved.
Second.
All right,
That's what I meant.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Consent agenda, I'm just going to break it down into two. I'm going to do the first 8, and then I'll do the 9th separately, just because it's a little bit different than what we normally do. Not that that means we have to have discussion, but just in case, I'll do the first 8 as one bulk. Motion to accept a payment in the amount of $24.90 from Bay State Textiles to Hill Roberts. Motion to accept a payment in the amount of $43.50 from Bay State Textiles to Hill Roberts. Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $25,000 from the Hyman Fine PTO for the purchase of smart boards. Motion to accept the donation of 100 backpacks with school supplies for an estimated value of $1,500 from the Greater Attleboro Area Council for Children. Motion to accept the donation of 24 backpacks with school supplies for an estimated value of $400 from Cape and Park Dental. Motion to accept the donation of school supplies from the Attleboro Moose Lodge with an estimated value of $350. Motion to accept the contractual obligation in the amount of $52.75 from Planet Aid, Inc. as broken down on the check receipt dated August 17th, 2023. And a motion to accept the donation in the amount of $5,500 from the Feinstein Foundation to the Hyman Fine School Gifts donation line.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And next, we have a motion to forward to the municipal council for approval, a prior year invoice, or excuse me, prior year invoices in the amount of $7,262.04.
So moved.
Second.
And the memo by Mr. Furtado and the corresponding invoices were included with the materials. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Yeah. You know, when I see, I know it was consent agenda, but a $25,000 from a PTO, I think we should really point that out. I mean, our PTOs do so much for our schools, and they make such a difference. When you see $25,000 for smartboard technology, I think we need to actually take a moment and say thank you to that PTO. So,
Great point. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Storrs. Well done to the Hyman Fine PTO and all our PTOs for all the strong work they do. Thank you. Good point. Thank you. Any new business tonight? Mr. Geddes?
Not necessarily new business, but along the lines of donations. It wasn't to the school department, but Sodexo every year does provide backpacks. Typically, it's through their back-to-school bash, which the event didn't happen this year, but I want to express my sincere gratitude to Jason Parento. One of the food pantries in the city reached out because they had a number of families that were not going to be able to access school supplies on their own, and he coordinated making sure that those families got those school supplies. So we all know what great work he does for the district, but that was awesome, so thank you.
Any other new business tonight? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.